seconds.
Okie doke.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm so happy that we're back. It's maybe almost a year ago, the last session for the Kafka community, the data streaming podcast for Kafka community in Cairo, and I'm so happy that my guest today is a very special guest. Thanks, Pete, for joining me and accepting my invitation to join the Kafka Cairo community. It was really nice, and I think it will be a very, very solid comeback after a year of pausing from the sessions. I think we have a very, very special guest today. Peter is more than 30 years of experience in the data world, from the batch processing to the data streaming. He is the EMEA Chief Data Officer at Confluent. So I would leave the floor for you, Pete, to introduce yourself to the audience.
Thanks, Karim. And first of all, I should welcome you back. I clearly we've been missing you in this last 12 months. So it's fantastic that you're restarting your sessions, and I feel very privileged to be your first session, right? So thank you so much. Yes, I'm Pete, or PPJ, or just Pete Pugh-Jones. Don't worry about all that. Just Pete is fine. And I work at a company called Confluent now, and now an IBM company. We can touch on some of that if there are any questions about it. Confluent has been around for at least 10 years, a bit longer, I think. But I've been there for 4 years. But my career, as you say, has gone quite a long time, and since the late 80s, when I was very, very young. I was only 5 then. I'm only kidding. But this is in the late 80s, working on the systems of the day at the time, all the way through to the modern era. And somewhere along that journey, I became very frustrated with batch-based systems, and how in those days we had to work sometimes really late into the night to ensure things were running correctly, and people would ring us up and make us go into the offices and fix things and stuff like this. And I thought there had to be a better way. And that's when I discovered stream processing, this idea of doing things in the stream. And then later I discovered Kafka, which was, for me, the ultimate thing, because that was the platform that we needed to make stream processing a reality in the business world today. So yeah, that's my journey. I'm very, very proud to be part of Confluent, and now part of IBM as well.
Yeah. I think we need to touch base on this move. I'm a very, very big fan of Kafka and Confluent specifically, and I think the move is really big. We might touch base on this, but before, I need to hear more from you about the move. How things, if you can shed light on batch processing back in time, maybe 20 or 15 years ago, how things you feel that the borderline that you need to stop processing, and I need batch processing, and I need to check the real time or stream processing when I need to move. What is the switching point? What are the conditions that let you switch it to stream processing?
Yeah, there's many touch points where we can describe the sort of critical point at which people or businesses might decide that streaming is the way forward. But perhaps if we do a little bit of just a recap from the technology over that time, according to me, which may not be exactly the same for everybody else. But when I first started work, I was actually using a command line tool called awk, right? And you would write code into awk that would allow you to use regular expressions to search through files to find information you wanted. In fact, what you were really doing before SQL existed, before SQL, a language existed, and databases really existed, you were effectively writing a sort of filtering and searching facility in those files to grab data, right? And
Yes.
then what obviously happened over time was we needed to get, first of all, we needed to make a way for people to have better access to things who may be less technical, maybe didn't want to have to write complicated code or didn't want to have to write complicated systems. But we also needed a way to find it easier to get to the data and to keep the data in a structured format to make it reusable. And this is where databases originated from. And they started even before my career, which is hard to believe, but they did start before my career. But that whole concept of databases was to say, well, we've got very expensive things called disks and very expensive things called computers, and we want to be able to use them, but we can't get all the data we want to have available in there all the time. So we had to come up with a way to store the data and structure the data to make it usable and beneficial and valuable. But that means that if you think about that, we built our technology systems because of the limitations of the hardware and that we had, right? So the data systems we were building were limited by the capability of the hardware, and because of that, we adopted sort of an evolution over time of, okay, the disks are getting bigger, the machines are getting faster, but we're still doing the data the same way, right? And we're still doing the data the same way. And even when we got to the world of Hadoop in the sort of 2000s, we're still basically talking about lifting up the data and putting it somewhere before we start looking at the data. And so that's the kind of evolutionary path that we've been on, really almost driven by the capabilities of the technology. Now, the idea of stream processing, when it was first introduced to me, was like revolutionary, right? It kind of opened up my eyes to something completely different. And it does make sense if you think about it. If we hadn't had that sort of forced evolution, that, if we hadn't been limited by the technology when we first started using computers, we probably wouldn't have built it all that way, right? We probably would have built it based on things that we understand today. When we ourselves process information, we're streaming about 8 megabits per second through each eye, right? That's the estimate. That's what medical estimates say. And we're flowing that information through patterns we have stored in our brains, right? Colors that I recognize, types of cars I recognize, people's faces I know, names I remember. And we merge those streams together in our brain to come up with, oh, it's Pete I'm talking to, or it's Bob I'm talking to. And if you think about it, that's evolved over many millions of years. So why wouldn't we want to try to use a technology that works the same way? And that's really the argument for stream processing, right?
Yes, Pete. I think it's really nice. It's really nice analogy, whereby if I would re-articulate this, so stream processing, it has been here for years now, but maybe the hardware limitation, the capabilities of the infrastructure was banning us from doing it the way we're doing it right now.
Yes,
right.
100%. You could, if you had a lot of money, let's say you're a very large bank and you had lots of money to spend because maybe you could afford it, you could build a stream processing capability 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But it would be very brittle, very hard coded, right? It would be linked to the sources. It wouldn't be flexible. If you wanted to change something, you'd have to build a new one and write it again, and it would be very high maintenance. And the limitations of those stream processing things were use case specific. But in the modern era, Kafka kind of democratizes that for us, right? And the ability to stream process on that stream is really the exciting, I think the most exciting development over the last 20 years, really, other than AI itself.
Yes. We'll come to the AI in a very few minutes. But before this, let's try to, in order for the audience also to get in and cope with us, let's think of the banking industry. Let's shed light on the banking industry and try to see if we're working together in digital transformation project for a bank, and we're trying to convince the management with the use cases. They want to go to AI. They want to use AI and want to do the digital transformation. However, it's not about just buying an Anthropic or an LLMs, get the hardware for LLMs and introduce AI on top of my database and things will work. There is a mindset shift has to be implemented. There is a strategic actions has to be done on the data infrastructure, on the team mindset, on the top management mindset. From your experience working with Confluent and being years in the data streaming, what are the challenges? What are the resistance points came from something like banks, which since they are the most rigid maybe institutions for the data criticality, What are the resistance points you face in your experience?
Yeah, it's a large area, as I'm sure you could imagine. But if we were to boil it down to sort of maybe three specific things as a start point, right? So rather interestingly, depending on the part of the bank you're talking to, you might get a different answer, right? So if we go back
Mhm.
to my example of people that could, or departments that could maybe afford to invest in stream processing in the past, they might have used it for things like algorithmic trading or high performance trading or high frequency trading, because they can make decisions very quickly as the thing appears, decide and then do something, right? So these are the sort of basics of stream processing, if you think about it. But they would have been, as we said, for bespoke use cases. So in the sort of investment side of the banking world, you might actually have found quite a bit of stream processing in place for some time. But again, very bespoke and very boutique sort of
Yes. Yes.
audiences. When we turn to the more sort of retail side of the bank, where it's all about people's, public's money. There's a lot of regulation in place. There's all sorts of rules and requirements about what happens with that data. I think that's where the beginnings of a challenge come from. So that's my second point. Really, is that in the retail side of banking, there's so many things that banks have to try to manage before they can play with the data, because they've got all of these problems of risk and regulation and requirements that they must be able to show things and do things with people's data that are only within certain rules and requirements. One of those things would be very much PII type data, right? Personal data, and
Yes.
it's taken a long time, I think, for many businesses to actually start, or banks rather, to actually start to decompose the regulations down to why are they asking me for this, and how can I handle this piece in a world where my strategy is towards a sort of streaming paradigm, and rather than what was the past, which was the regulator would say, here's a list of things that you must comply with, and it was just easier to say, let's do them all, let's comply with them all, rather than break it down and try and figure out, well, which things can I do within these rules that still lets me have some advantage or work better for my customer base. And I think though that's really the sort of that's the evolution to the future. So many banks are now starting to think about the regulations and how they can utilize some of the modern technologies, especially streaming, to help them do things better for customers while still adhering to their regulatory sort of commitments, if that makes sense.
Yes,
The three
yes,
pieces.
yes. Make lots of sense, Pete. And I think since we never the first time we met in the data streaming world tour by Confluent this year, and most of the audience back then it was banks. I was very excited about and happy about the mind shift happened in the top management in the data strategy for banks to adopt the data streaming and think about how we can shift our mindset from just batch processing and just running nightly jobs on our database or data warehouse into a data streaming. But what are the if we're moving past the top management and go a little bit down to the tech or the data teams, what are the challenges? What are the requirements has to be there in place for the tech team or the data team to start thinking of the shifting to data streaming? What are the main capabilities, the main pillars that they need to focus on?
Yes. So really, I think that's they need maybe the start point at the technical level. The teams that manage the data in the various different departments of a bank would need to really be motivated and want to re-examine some of the things that they've already got, some of the things that they do now, and to see whether or not those things are still going to be the way they work now, suitable for the future direction they want to go in, the strategic direction they want to go in. So, if from the very top there's a desire to move to a strategy where there's more artificial intelligence utilized, then if there's a desire for more personalization, and we can talk a bit more about that later, if you like,
Yes.
for your customers, if that's a desire that they want to get to, then I think it does require the folks at the technical level to go, okay, I'm very, I love this system I have right now. It's worked. We've nurtured this. We've evolved this. We've used whatever the system is for several decades, perhaps, and it does exactly what it's supposed to do. But is it going to serve the needs of that future direction in its current form? And do we need to start thinking about finding a way to get either the data out of it more rapidly for AI type use cases? Or do I even need to think about how I might have to move away or evolve away from that system to a new way of doing things, maybe an event-driven kind of architecture? And I think these are genuine questions that we should be asking ourselves as technical people in every situation we have, because in the end, right, all of us are also consumers of data, right? And
Yes.
if we ourselves have mobile phones and our mobile phones have apps on them and those apps tell us something that's interesting all the time with updates, then surely we also realize that our customers that we serve in our banking organizations will also expect to have real value from data that we might supply them with continuously too. And I think that's the sort of the key driver for anyone who works in technology today to do that. And it might be that some things stay the same. You don't need to change them, right? Or it could be that you have to go to the person that supplies you with the data, right? That maybe there's a supplier of data and say to them, I need to move this to a streaming paradigm. I need you to modernize your systems to help me do that, right? And that's a bigger conversation to have. Yeah.
So I think it starts all from the strategic goal of the organization that can be cascaded down, and the top management or the North Star direction for the organization. If we need to adopt the AI, this has to be strategically broken down into milestones, data transformation. I remember from the book Fundamentals of Data Engineering by Joris, one of the things that the pyramids of the hierarchy of data, on the top, on the very top tip of the pyramid, is the AI and the LLM, and the very basic or the very core step is the data infrastructure, the data governance, the data monitoring and alerting, basic analytics, advanced analytics, basic machine learning, and then you can go to the AI. So I think it's all begins from the strategic goal and direction for the organization to adopt AI that can be cascaded or broken down. Might include data streaming, and as you mentioned, it might not if the strategic goal doesn't contains the AI and the collecting or connecting the data together.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and that's fine. I think that's exactly it. I think it really does need to be, what's the stated goal for the business and the future of the services they want to offer, and then each department has a responsibility to some extent, I think, to re-examine how they do things now. And actually, I'm talking like nobody's doing this. Of course, everybody is doing that, right? That's exactly the point, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But have you ever faced a kind of resistance? What are the tips and tricks that you use to maybe to convince the management? What are the guidance? Most probably, all the institutions or the industries, especially nowadays, given the macro and micro situations, political, financial situations, all the industries or all the institutions trying to cut costs to pull back their expenditures. From your perspective as a CDO that might lead the data strategy for an organization, what are the tips and tricks that you might give it as a cheat sheet for the management that you can play with your management to convince? Is there anything related to ROI, cost reduction, that might come from having the data streaming or the data strategy that convince the management?
Yes. So, I mean, there are obviously it will be dependent a little bit on each individual customer's journey, where each bank in this case journey as to where they are in their evolution and where they are in their modernizations, perhaps as well. But generally speaking, I think there's two things that we can suggest seems to work quite well, right? So, number one, the strategic direction. So there's a vision that someone somewhere needs to own in the business that says, this is the way we want to go. We want to get to a point where we can do X, and maybe X is we want to have, let's go to the personalization example. We might want to have some way of individually holding on to context to do with each and every one of our customers in a way that they feel delighted by the experience. So, if you think about our older sort of traditional ways of working with a business like a bank, you might send them an email, you might use an app, you might do a phone call, you might have text messages, and then when you ring them up, you are going to be, I'm afraid, most of the time in the past, disappointed to have to then go back through all the things that you sent them through those other communication channels, right? Because they always want to know all that again. Well, in the modern era, most people will expect something different from that, right? They will expect that the services they're having are joined up in some way. There's some kind of context that they're going to be aware of to do with you. And I think how you do that is you sell internally within your bank this vision for, say a personalized service, right? So if it's Pete and he's contacted us over all of these different channels, the next time he asks a question, the answer will be, well, based on the other things you've asked us about, this is what we think you should do, Pete, right? And this is really powerful. This is the kind of service that people might want. But to get to that, that's a vision, right? And obviously that's an AI or agentic AI type of vision there, right? And to get to that, you're going to have to think about, well, how can I try to show that, demonstrate that to my board or to the leaders of my business to help them see how that could be done. Now, the answer there is do it small, right? Don't try and boil the ocean immediately. Don't pull all your systems out and try to do it right away. Go to some particular area where you've got an example that you can easily show the benefit. And maybe it's a simple one like a fraud detection scenario or money laundering scenario, or just a simple customer success thing, even like the one I described, where you can just
Yes.
demonstrate to the customer the context that you understand of all the different interactions you've had, and demonstrate that first. And then that gets the confidence of the leadership of the business to help move forward with it, right? And I think these are the general ways to help explain why you might need a streaming kind of environment.
Yeah, I think I might pick from where you mentioned the personalization or customer personalization use case. And I maybe might want to add that it's not always a silver bullet to start your data strategy. As you mentioned, it's all about the state and the current state, the current structure, the current where we stand with your organization. You might start with something like cost reduction. Maybe we have fraud activities impacting our business big time. We might start the use case of data streaming or adopting the data streaming in fraud scenarios or fraud detection. In some banks or some industries or some fintechs, since I'm coming from the fintech industry, maybe fraud is not the biggest problem, and I want to do the upselling for the customer or do more retention or get closer to the customer. So customer personalization or data personalization might be the case to start with. So it's not a silver bullet, or it's not a manifest to start working on. You need to start working on fraud and then personalization. You will be on the right track. There is no silver bullet manifest, right?
No,
Pete?
definitely not. Although it might be, if you have a conversation internally within your bank, if you are the bank, there might well be a problem that someone somewhere's been grappling with for a long time that they've not been able to solve. And if you have the right conversations, that could be, it could be a sort of not silver bullet, but it could be the first way that you test whether this strategy could work for you, right? Because it's a pain point that's already there. It's a small effort. And actually, you don't want to, if the objective is to reduce costs, you've got to start small to make it demonstrate the benefit, because there is going to be a cost over time, right? I mean, if you're going to move from a batch-based organization, if that's the vision you have, to a streaming-based organization, there will be upfront costs you have to think about for that. But the longer-term gain will hopefully then reduce the costs over time, right? Yeah.
One of the problems is we're gonna reduce cost, but we need to pay or invest $1 million a year so I think this is one of the most challenging discussions. I took a few of them with one of the clients or the systems that I consult. It was really hard to convince the management that you need to invest in order to fix the problems. And this is one of the challenges that the top management cannot maybe relate or understand or digest. I want to to cut cost? Why are you coming and asking for a very high bill or high investment in cutting cost? So I think this is also one of the challenges that the management are facing, or not the management, the middle management or the data strategists are leading in the organizations are
Mhm.
facing with the top management in big enterprises or corporates. Um, when it comes to the AI, let's or dive deeply a little bit in the AI and how the AI relate to the data streaming world, and can we implement in high traffic data or high volume data environments like banks without having a proper data architecture or a data structure or a data streaming in the vision of the AI?
So I actually think it's really hard to demonstrate success from artificial intelligence in the modern era if you haven't got a streaming platform in some way in your business to help support it. I think that's a really key statement, and that's mainly because the real benefit of artificial intelligence is giving you outcomes or advice or actions to take based on the information that you've given it, right? You give it information and it gives you recommendations or actions to take. But if the information you've given it is not the most current version of context about something, if it doesn't know that in the last 2 minutes I asked something else of a system somewhere, then the information or the advice it gives could be incorrect, right? So you want to, I mean, that's a very simplistic example, but you have to take the best advantage of artificial intelligence. You have to have the most current information available to it to make the value, real value out of it, right? And I think if you are therefore supplying it with data that is not the most up to date, you are going to run into challenges over time. And the good news is most banks that I'm aware of do have some kind of streaming platform in place, if be it Confluence Kafka or be it open source Kafka. And if that is the case, they can quite easily demonstrate a few examples, usually with that existing infrastructure, you tying in some AI to help demonstrate why the benefits are there. But yeah, AI really without streaming is difficult. I mean, I will be honest, most of the most of the products that people use out there for artificial intelligence right now are utilizing a streaming platform themselves, right? Claude, Open AI, they utilize a streaming platform or Kafka to help them do what they do. So it really is almost impossible for you to utilize AI correctly without a streaming platform as part of it.
I think this is a really, really important point that I also need to pick up from, whereby there is a very big distinction between organizations that doesn't have or doesn't adopt a data streaming platform in place, maybe for event-driven architecture, if they are on an event-driven architecture, not necessarily to be on a stream processing flow or on data streaming approach, but having the edge of getting the technology in your organization, it cut the shot for you maybe half the way through to start make POCs or demonstrate how can streaming processing or stream processing enhance or maybe support your decision in the AI transformation. So you have the advantage of the technology in place. You will not have to take the argument of I need to invest a lot in bringing up the infrastructure for Kafka open source or bringing the license for Confluent. You have this advantage. You can start play around with this to proof of concept the how AI can adopt the data
Yeah,
streaming.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, the one of the challenges I think with a lot of these sort of environments is that people they Kafka, wonderful though it is, a lot of people adopt it for reasons of just moving data from one place to another, perhaps, right? And in a very simplistic way. And often that might be, and I'm sure you've all heard, anyone listening will have heard the term dumb pipe before, right? Which it literally means you're pulling data from this place over here, and you don't do anything with the data while it's in flight, and you stick it over here. This really goes back to the fundamental idea of stream processing, right? So if you think that Kafka is a stream and the data is in the stream moving from one place to another, right? It's almost like you would challenge yourself. Why wouldn't you want to look at that data stick your head in the stream while it's in that pipe, and see if you can derive something useful from it as it's there, right? And maybe tie in some artificial intelligence at that point. It's almost like that question. It's, you've got the infrastructure, why wouldn't you try to take advantage of it, right? And that's, but you're absolutely right, there are some easy wins then people can have if they've already got the technology. However, if you're going to use it with things like artificial intelligence, you will need to put things like schema registry and other things in place. You can't have just any old message through, right? But
Yes,
that's a slight
yes.
bit that you'd have to think about.
And here maybe since you mentioned the schema registry, it popped up the governance part and the how we can guarantee or control when it comes to the database world or the SQL world or the relational model. There is a schema, there is a validation, there is a data on the application side and on the backend side, or sorry, on the
Yes.
database engine side. But this is not the case in Kafka. It's not mandatory in Kafka, but you can use the schema registry to enforce the schema. How do you see this governance part playing a role in building your data streaming? Is it mandatory? Is it not? Is it nice to have? Is it must to have?
I kind of think it's an absolute, it's, you need it, right? For AI use cases, you will absolutely have to have a governance and lineage layer within the stream, right? I don't think you can realistically, you can experiment, but you can't go
To
into
go
a
production.
production world without having something to govern that environment. I mean, databases are exactly the same, exactly like you say. You couldn't put any old data into a database and then just make it production and hope everybody's happy with it, right? You'd have to, if the whole, you have to put the governance in place, you have to put the structure in place. And in the same way, for someone to be confident that the data that they're seeing as outcomes, or the actions that they're seeing that they should take, for them to be confident that that's built on good data, you have to be able to show the lineage and then effectively the governance that was in place to ensure it, from the start. And if you're going to utilize streaming this way, you do have to. You just have no choice. You are going to have to put some rules in place. Now, do you have to use schema registry? Well, maybe not, right? You could, you could control it from other things so that you never put anything into Kafka that doesn't meet these requirements, right? And you could do that sort of management outside. But actually, I would suggest it's a lot easier if you've already invested in things like Kafka to then utilize schema registry to help you. And within it now, there's all these extra capabilities, right? So you can mask the data, you can put rules in place about role-based access, who can use the data for what, and effectively you can create sort of data products that way, right, in the stream. So that gives you the option to sort of almost have topics that are intended to be consumed for things like AI, or for users downstream, or for Snowflake users or Databricks users. Of course, other analytics tools exist, right? Those are the
Yeah,
only two I remember.
yeah. Right, right, right. Um, does it mean that if we move to the data streaming world, does it mean that the batch processing will vanish, or both can coexist together?
So personally, I believe that both will always have to exist together, because I mean, there may be a day in many centuries' time where there are some, where all services are continuously running and continuously flowing, and there's no static need for data anywhere, right? It's but I suspect that's a very far away.
No, no
And
memory capping, no CPU capping, no cost for the
yeah,
infrastructure running, so you can run all the queries on a streaming. Yeah,
I think it could be a long way. So I think there will always be the need for both. And luckily, most streaming, well, certainly with the Confluent solutions, and I would say with most of the customers that I work with, they understand that they can serve both batch and stream type data in these capabilities. Within Flink, for example, you have the ability to tie up to hook up to lookup tables that might be somewhere else, right? So you can look at the history if you need to, as you consume new events through, and match them to something, right? So I think there will always be this ability to, you need to have an ability to consume stream. And actually, someone the other day, I haven't worked on Flink that long myself, but somebody told me the other day, who has worked on Flink a very long time, that actually Flink itself, the stream processing that we obviously are keen to help promote, that originated as a batch system. I didn't know that, right?
yes,
When it was first built
yes,
in Germany, I believe it was a batch system. And it was only later they started adding the streaming capability. So I think it's perfectly acceptable to have both.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree, and I second you 100%. I worked with Flink maybe in the very, very early days of Flink, maybe 10 or 13 years ago. It was a micro batch processing engine.
Yes.
Uh, and yeah, it was amazing to me, both Flink and Kafka, how they evolved over the years, how they were
Hmm.
very consistent, and they're seeing the direction of the data. And that's why I'm really fascinated with Confluence specifically over the years, that it's uh, taking the scene and adopting the data streaming approach over the years. Um, when it comes to the ultimate uh, data architecture or data structure, how do you see or envision the landscape of the ultimate data architecture or the ultimate data streaming environment?
Well, I think in a financial services or a banking scenario, I do think it's about individual departments within a business understanding the value of all types of speed of data, right, and being able to leverage the right one for the kinds of use cases that they have without adding massive extra cost every time they want to do something. And the only way you can do that really is to have some sort of democratized access to these systems. So services within your business that you can offer internally. So a platform team that look after Confluent, an AI team that look after the AI elements that are plugged into the platform. You know, this is, I mean, most businesses are heading in that direction, and I think that's the main thing. And then when you look at architectures of a business, seeing the usage of for certainly for retail and for customer service type scenarios, the usage of agentic to achieve the kind of outcomes that customers will benefit from the most, while achieving perhaps a really good return on the investment for the business that offered that service. Right. I think to do that, it's quite a long way off, but I'm already thinking of some customers and businesses that we work with who have plans in that space. Right. There are companies around the world who've either already decided they're going to adopt a streaming first strategy, and they've actually decided that already, and then they've got a 5-year plan that they're going to use to get there. And then you've got other businesses that are very, very huge, and maybe they're going to pick it as a sort of different departments doing it slowly so that they can
Yes.
reduce the risks. But I really think that's the key. I think somebody joining a bank in 10 years or 5 years from now, hopefully they would arrive at that business and go, okay, I see there are tools I can use very easily to help me flow my data to build my project for an individual customer to get the best out of it. But there's also tools, if I need to, that I can easily take advantage of to help me do stuff in a batch related way still, right? And I think those are the things I would like, a nirvana type dream, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Uh, Usually, I know I don't have answer neither for this, but usually from your experience in the data journey for enterprises, either banks or other enterprises, usually does it how long does it take to start the roller coaster? You're just pushing till they get the understand the direction, understand the strategy, understand the impact of data streaming. How usually does this journey of convincing, of showcasing, adding the business value, usually does it take with the big enterprises? I know the maturity level differs, the
Yeah.
where this enterprise stands differ, but usually on average for maybe in the Middle East, since you're specialized in the EMEA region, usually how does it take on average?
Well, so I think, and it's difficult to say for sure because obviously every business is different. But generally speaking, if there is someone in the business who is leading the vision for the future direction that they're trying to get to, and if that direction is something that's AI related and that is designed to maybe help save costs but improve the benefits that they offer, then I think it can be quite fast. And I've seen some really incredible speed that folks are adopting these things. But that's maybe because what they're doing is running it in parallel. So it might cost a little bit more to do that, right? So you've got your existing services that are in production. You're not touching those. That's still running. And then in parallel, they maybe fire up some new capabilities utilizing the streaming platform paradigm, the AI capabilities, and they run them in parallel for a little while before they decide when they're going to switch them off. But I've seen some actually the businesses that tend to be able to adopt a little bit faster are those that are slightly smaller, right? Not the big GSIBs and the tier ones, but perhaps slightly smaller, because they have the ability to move a little faster in some parts of the world than others, I would say.
I think this is one of the most important things and advices actually. It's when you're doing the data shift or the mindset shift to the data streaming, you're not necessarily need to shut down the old systems. You need to try to incrementally add to the existing system, try to shadow the existing system, and try to not manipulate, but having the proof of concept running in parallel, and incrementally you can adopt this approach instead of big bang change and just stop this system and run the new system. Usually things doesn't work, don't work this way,
Yes,
right?
I think you could be on a recipe for some disaster if you go too big too soon. But also because you've got to remember, you've got to also convince a lot of people, right, that this is going to work internally in your business. So if start small, start with something in parallel. Hopefully that also won't mean it's too costly, right? Because you're not spending a massive amount on it. You're demonstrating the value. And be realistic, I think, is the big one, right? Because you asked the question about the cost at the beginning, and I think that's an important one. So when you plan to do these kinds of initiatives or modernizations, if you want to call them that, I think you have to be realistic about at what point is it going to start to either save me money or return on the investment that we're making, so that I can then consider turning off this other system and plan for that, right? And it might be a year, it
Yes.
might be 6 months, it might be 2 years, but most projects that I'm aware of for the very big banks can take almost, before they might turn something on, could even take a year, right? And I think that's a realistic kind of start point to think about. Okay, I may have to invest in this new thing for 6 months to 8 months to 9 months before I can be certain that in a further 3 months, so 12 months in total, I could turn off this other thing. And I think that's a realistic kind of thing. It will get faster though after the first one, right? And that's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
I really second you on this. But on the other hand, or the other side of the spectrum, here we're trying to shed light on how we can make things fly, how we
mhm.
can push toward the. On the other hand, I don't think not all the data streaming projects fly or get into the success momentum that we're looking for. How often do you see these kind of failures? Is it did you face when you engage in one of the projects with the clients that the management start decided to stop the project for any reason? And what are the maybe the lesson learned, why these projects get into a shutdown? What is the lesson learned from these kind of projects
I mean, this is not specific to any part of the world. I would say it's a more general, I
in
would say as
general?
a general
Yes.
comment. And I would say as a general comment, I think it is when the vision has been, we need to do some AI. And then to do that AI, we're going to spend the least amount of money we can to put together something that serves that purpose without really thinking about having to go right the way back to those technical teams and others to get them to re-examine what they might need to do. In other words, it's really when folks haven't really committed to the investment they might have to make, right? They want to do some AI, they've got to do that because that's the task, but actually they haven't really put aside enough money to do that in a way that will be effective. So they might do enough for one little project, but it's not then scalable or sustainable for new projects because they haven't changed enough of the things underneath. And I think that can be the problem, is having the wrong expectations about how to do it, right?
I think uh, I have nothing more to discuss, but I think it's the perfect closure is what you've mentioned, Pete. it's really nice that it's all, again, it's not about technical capabilities. There are technical capabilities. It's not about the technology. It's all about the strategy, the goal, direction of the management and the top management, and the investment has to be digested. It's AI will not come at zero cost or a very minimal cost with 10x multiplies return on investment. There is nothing like this in the world.
Yes, I
So
mean it's almost like it's almost if you think about it, it makes perfect sense, right? If I do just this one thing, I'm going to return a 10x investment. Of course not. And that's how we need to think about it in business. And as you say, it's a organizational transformation, mindset transformation that has to happen as well, right? And I think this is
yes,
really vital. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
yes. Um, it's I think it's the best closure for today's session. I really enjoyed it. The tips and tricks, the advices, the journey throughout the management. I think it's few years back, data streaming was not on the surface of the discussions, especially for the enterprises, due to the rigidness that we mentioned in the beginning. But now I think it's really one of the biggest topics, given the data streaming world tour, and the banks are the top attendees, and they are the one who are leading this sport. So I think it's transformation time. Someone in the audience is asking about, is there a question time? Muaz, if you would like, please drop your questions. We might have a few minutes to answer it, but if not, we will end the show. Please drop your question if you have any. Uh, Meanwhile, until Muaz might write his question, it was really nice discussion, Pete. Maybe we might have another session soon. The next one will be with Kai. I think is a good friend of you.
So it
So
is. I'm really excited that you're going to have Kai on the next one. I think you'll have a fantastic discussion. He's worked in so many different industries, and he knows so many different customer use cases and things that he's worked on in the Kafka and the stream processing space. It's a great natural progression to have a chat with Kai as well. So I'm very jealous that you'll be talking to him, but I might even tune in to watch.
yeah, the next time will be, maybe we'll be complementing or expanding on today's discussion.
Yeah,
So yeah, I hope you attended, and I hope the discussion will be nice. So
yeah.
my question is, what are the most three technical skills to enter the streaming world?
That's a terrific question, and as usual, being a diplomat, it kind of depends a little bit on your on which part of the streaming world. And I'll try and caveat it without being too long winded. But if what you want to do is if you're building applications, then you would be more in the programming space. And if you're in the programming space, then you're going to want to be certainly a coder, and you're going to need to understand the concepts of streaming. And this is actually consistent across all three. You need to understand the concepts of stream processing, of event-driven architecture, and things like temporal windows, temporal timing, windows of information that you're interested in capturing events from. And these are things that you can definitely learn by going onto the internet and looking up things like Flink and other tools that are out. Stream processing as a concept has been around a good 30 years. And Flink is now probably the most standard one that people
The de
use for this
facto, yes.
capability. But there are other stream processing capabilities, and they all use very similar terminology. So if once you understand stream processing as a concept, then it allows you to open the door into doing more and more stream processing kind of projects. Now, within that, you've got programming interfaces for stream processing. Python is a good language to know. Java, of course, you would need to know, or you'd want to know, especially if you're a programmer. SQL and data engineering, those are two really important things. If you understand the SQL language or SQL language, and you have a background in any kind of data engineering, databases and such, then that's a really good thing to have. So really, stream processing concepts, data engineering, and a programmer. Those are probably the three things that you might need. But you don't need all three of them necessarily to be successful in streaming and stream processing, because there are tools out there that can help you do some parts in an easier way, such as UIs and so forth. Okay, so hopefully that answers that a little bit for you.
Um, Okay, so I think I almost second you, Pete, on this. Having the understanding the core concepts of data streaming, the as you mentioned, the window processing, the dual nature of the streams, whether it's a stream or a table, the APIs for something like Java or Kafka streams. I think the most advanced APIs are built in Java or any GVM based language,
Mhm.
and definitely Flink is
And
the
if you know C++ too, that's good.
I forgot to shed light that you're a C++
Yeah,
advocate, given your very big experience in development. So it was C++, which is the one of the most important languages uh, in the world. But yeah, unfortunately, Kafka is written in Java, so
that's fine. I can live with that.
um, anyway, so it was my pleasure hosting you, Pete. It was really nice having you on my show, and yeah, uh, I think we might uh, talk again in another episode.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Karim. Have a great meeting next week with Kai, and I'll look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thank you very much, and thanks everyone
thank
for
you,
joining us.
thank you.
Bye bye now.